Unbelievable video captures Marine drone target Russia Black Sea fleet in Sevastopol. Russia reported one warship was damaged after they alleged Ukraine's defense forces carried out a drone attack on the port city of Sevastopol, Crimea. Russian officials said 9 drones were engaged in attempts to strike Moscow's Black Sea fleet. Russia said the attack was repelled but one warship was damaged, accusing Ukraine of carrying out the strike. Kyiv has not claimed the attack, but the area has been subjected to an increase in military activity in recent weeks. Footage has now emerged showing one of the drones engaged in the Black Sea blitz approaching the port of Sevastopol. The video shows the drone proceeding at speed towards the shore, with shots being fired from helicopters overhead in an attempt to stop the weapon. A large caliber shot can be seen being shot to the right of the drone as it continues on its path towards the Russian fleet. Later in the video, shared by Ukrainian journalist Andrei Zaplyenko, the drone can be seen passing by a small boat with at least 3 soldiers on board, one of whom appears to dive into the sea as the marine drone passed by. BBC Ukraine correspondent James Waterhouse commented on the video on Twitter, "Unbelievable footage from one of the marine drones used in the attack on Russia's Black Sea fleet in Sevastopol." Social media users have also been reacting to the astonishing footage, noting a clear struggle among Russian troops to target the drone despite the straight direction it maintained throughout the video. At Hong Chong commented, "The Russians can't hit anything. The drone was going mostly in a straight line, and Russians couldn't hit the thing. Want to get rid of Russian ammo? Just send out 100 drones in the Black Sea in a straight line going different directions but on long courses." At Slip66G37 said, "It's actually pretty accurate fire. You don't see the rounds that actually hit, just the ones in front of the camera. Hitting a moving target in the water from another moving target is not easy, even with optical sensors. You notice it's going slower and slower." The attack comes less than a month after Ukraine targeted and partially destroyed the Kerch Bridge connecting Crimea to mainland Russia. The area has been at the center of fierce dispute since Moscow illegally annexed the region in 2014, with Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky committing to reclaim Crimea as Ukraine launched a series of successful counteroffensives. In response to the attack on the Black Sea fleet, Russia announced it would suspend its participation in an UN-brokered deal to export agricultural produce from Ukrainian ports after attacks on ships in Crimea. In a statement released on Saturday, the Russian Ministry of Defense said, taking into account the terrorist act by the Kyiv regime with the participation of British experts against the ships of the Black Sea fleet and civilian vessels involved in ensuring the security of the grain corridor, the Russian side suspends participation in the implementation of agreements on the export of agricultural products from Ukrainian ports. The ministry said earlier that the drone attacks on Saturday were largely repelled, with minor damage to a Russian minesweeper. The Ukrainian president's chief of staff, Andrei Yermak, accused Russia of blackmail and invented terror attacks on its own territory on Saturday following explosions in the Crimea Peninsula on Saturday. His comments were an apparent response to Russian accusations that Ukraine was behind the blasts. Massive drone attack on Black Sea fleet halts vital Ukrainian grain deal. Many countries in Africa and the Middle East rely on Ukraine's grain, with Washington accusing Russia of weaponizing food by cutting off the deal. Russia has suspended a UN-brokered deal after a massive drone attack on its Black Sea fleet at Sevastopol in Crimea. The move has led to condemnation from Ukraine, which has not commented on the attack. The strike occurred earlier today when Sevastopol residents said they heard large explosions occurring in Omega Bay. The Russian-installed governor of the city said Moscow had repelled the attack, which he called the most massive since February. Footage also emerged of what Moscow said was a Russian helicopter destroying an underwater drone. A Ukrainian journalist later released footage of what was said to be a maritime attack drone avoiding fire from a Russian helicopter. Sevastopol is the headquarters of the Kremlin's crucial Black Sea fleet. Ukrainian officials do not regularly comment about operations on the Crimean Peninsula, which Russia annexed in 2014. After the attack, Russia claimed that ships involved in the grain deal were targeted by the drones, without providing evidence. Later, Moscow announced that its commitments to the deal would be suspended for an indefinite period of time. Moscow also blamed the involvement of British specialists who it claimed had also blown up the Nord Stream pipelines last month. There is no evidence for either claim, the Russian Defense Ministry said on Telegram, taking into account the terrorist act by the Kyiv regime with the participation of British experts against the ships of the Black Sea fleet and civilian vessels involved in ensuring the security of the grain corridor. The Russian side suspends participation in the implementation of agreements on the export of agricultural products from Ukrainian ports. The move drew swift condemnation from Ukraine, whose officials have previously warned that Russia would attempt to renege on the agreement. Ukraine's Foreign Minister Dmytro Kuleba said in a tweet, "We have warned of Russia's plans to ruin the Black Sea grain initiative. Now Moscow uses a false pretext to block the grain corridor which ensures food security for millions of people. I call on all states to demand Russia to stop its hunger games and recommit to its obligations. A United Nations spokesperson told CNN that the organization had been in touch with Russian authorities following the announcement to end the deal. The news comes as fears build that the war in Ukraine could escalate out of control. Recently, Russia has warned of Ukraine deploying a dirty bomb on its own soil. A Russian official even claimed that Ukraine would deploy mosquitoes infected with bioweapons against its troops. Ukraine and the US were quick to dismiss these claims as part of a disinformation campaign. However, it could show that Putin may be ready to escalate as his forces continue to face an extremely difficult situation on the ground. Russian forces have evacuated civilians Kherson city in the face of a Ukrainian counteroffensive and are digging in for a fight there. Kherson is the only regional capital to fall to the Kremlin's forces following the February 24 invasion. Its loss would be a huge strategic blow for Russia. There have also been recent reports that fighting has intensified in the east of the country, where Ukraine recaptured huge amounts of land in a stunning counteroffensive which began last month. As Putin faces losses on the battlefield and calls to do more at home, it's possible the despot could see no way out of a losing situation but to escalate. Ukraine says abandoned Russian tanks have more than doubled their firepower. Ukraine says tanks and equipment abandoned by Russian troops during counteroffensives conducted by Kyiv have more than doubled their firepower. The press service of the National Guard of Ukraine said on Friday that ammunition, tanks and equipment left behind by Russian forces are helping Ukrainian troops to effectively carry out a counteroffensive in the southern Kherson region. The firepower of the National Guard has increased at least twice, National Guard fighter Yuri Tarasov was quoted as saying. Their equipment feasibility is great, because due to the rains, offensive actions can only be carried out if you have goosenecks, caterpillar tracks on military vehicles, he said. Kasarov said Russian troops have left behind modern equipment in good condition. The newest example is the T-80 tank. The BMP-3 is also in full working condition, made in 2021, even with the documentation. They left everything at our disposal, he said. It's good that we have stupid neighbors who left the equipment in such condition. The National Guard said this abandoned Russian equipment was honestly seized, and that there is so much of it that a group had to be created to transport it from the liberated territories. Last month, the Security Service of Ukraine, SBU, shared photos that showed examples of the huge arsenals of ammunition and equipment left behind by Russian troops as they retreated amid a Ukrainian counteroffensive. The images, published by the SBU's press service on Telegram and Twitter, show an abandoned vehicle and what appears to be boxes of ammunition and equipment in an unsupervised storage space in Izium, in Ukraine's southern Kharkiv region. Russian invaders, under pressure from Ukrainian soldiers, are fleeing in such a way that they are leaving behind entire arsenals of ammunition, the SBU said. We know what to do with them and we will definitely use them for their intended purpose, against the enemy. Anton Geshenko, an advisor at the Ukrainian Ministry of Internal Affairs, also said on September 11 that Russian soldiers had fled so rapidly amid Kyiv's counteroffensive in the region that they were leaving behind half of their equipment. Geshenko shared a video on Twitter that he said shows an abandoned Russian tank in Izium. Today our military accepted first Lend-Lease supplies from Russia in Izium. That's a joke, of course. I will mark my jokes for some time now, he wrote. Russian soldiers fled so fast they left half of their equipment.